Hi everybody, welcome back to 100% Mags. So I'm joined by Jordan Pomeroy from East Terrace Football on Instagram. You can go check him out as well on YouTube. Links down in the description below. So we're going to be doing the match preview for Newcastle versus Spurs at, of course, St James's Park. After Newcastle already getting the win down at Tottenham's new ground down in London. With Joe Linton, of course, scoring his first Premier League goal of the season. So going into this preview, I'd like to welcome first Jordan to the channel. Hi, mate.
Hi, Carl. Hi, mate. Yeah, nice to meet you. Hi, everyone. Yeah, cool channel here. This is really good. I've been watching a couple of videos over the last couple of days. Really impressed with all the content. So, yeah, it's all good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, mate. No problem. Right, so we'll talk about the game against Watford first, of course, with Newcastle fans watching on the channel. Hopefully there will be some Spurs fans watching as well. Like Jordan's saying, the game against Watford wasn't the greatest game, to be honest. You know, Newcastle should have really come away from that one with a win, I thought. Do you think the same, Jordan? Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, you know, to be honest, all you got to do is look at the recent form of Watford. You know, since lockdown's been kind of lifted and stuff like that, they've not really hit any sort of form to suggest that they were going to survive in the Premier League, to be honest. I mean, you know, they got a really late goal against Everton, didn't they? And, you know, they didn't really suggest anything to, you know, kind of give their fans much hope about staying up. So I was really surprised when I saw the result. But then, you know, once I saw the two goals, you know, that Deeney obviously scored from the spot,
Yeah.
I thought both penalty decisions were really soft, to be honest. I mean, like the second one in particular I thought it was a really poor decision. I thought the ref kind of bottled that a little bit. You know, I thought that once he gave the first one, as soon as a guy went down in the area for the second one, I thought he's going to give that because, you know, the first one was in his mind already, and it just goes to show, you know, a game can be flipped around immediately as soon as, you know, a poor decision from the ref is made. So
Yeah.
It wasn't great, was it, really?
No, not at all. I was sitting watching it in the house, and like when we scored the first goal, it was kind of an easy goal for Dwight Gale to get off of the flick of Federico Fernandez.
And yeah, it was. I mean, he was completely unmarked at the back post, wasn't he? So
yeah,
it was really poor defending from the corner. But Dwight Gale, you know, he doesn't score that many goals, but to be honest, I quite like him as you know, a kind of striker in and around the box. He does seem to always pop up in places and get the odd goal, doesn't he? So
yeah, he really does.
Him, really.
And then, like, basically, I thought we were going to go on and win the game, you know, with a big, like, beating against them, like, hammer Watford into the ground. Yeah. But it didn't look like it was going to be the case after Maximin got his chance saved by Ben Foster. And then, of course, the second half come out, didn't really work out as well, with Deeney getting that easy penalty. And then the second one, I felt the second one was fair, sort of, in a way, because Javi Manquillo was holding Ismail Sarr in the box. But the first one, I thought, was a little tame and a little bit weak.
Yeah. It's difficult now, isn't it, being a defender, because with VAR there, any little infringement or any kind of 50-50 foul within the box, you know that VAR might pull it up, and you know you've seen penalties given for a lot less. But yeah, just going back to what you're saying about that St. Maximin chance, I thought that was the turning point in the game, because when he was clean through, I thought if he scores that, then, you know, 2-0 down at home with the form that Watford were in, that's a long way back. And, you know, I mean, it was a good save from Foster, to be honest, but, you know, with the form that St. Maximin's in, I think he scored 2, or was it a hat-trick away at Bournemouth as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was a hat-trick at Bournemouth, yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, he was absolutely flying, and I really like him as a player, to be honest. I think he's really direct. He's rapid, quick, isn't he, in regards to his pace? And, yeah, I thought that one-on-one was a turning point. And obviously, you know, I don't know if that gave him a little bit of belief going into half-time, thinking, right, we're still in this, you know, going in 2-0 down. That, you know, that would have really given him quite a blow. But, yeah, I thought that was the most important part of the game, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So moving on from the game against Watford, we'll talk about the Arsenal versus Tottenham game. and of course, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was delighted, to be honest. I mean, after the game against Bournemouth, I mean, I did a bit of a Arsenal fan TV reaction on my YouTube channel just minutes after the game on Thursday with a 0-0. I mean, that was one of the worst games that I've ever seen Spurs play in my life, to be honest, without exaggeration. I mean, we had no creativity against a team who, you know, are all but down, to be honest. I mean, you know, all we had to do was have a look at Kane. He was completely fed up with it. A lot of the players just seem to lose so much creativity and belief after the first kind of hour of play. You know, I mean, like Mourinho was throwing on people like Tanguy and Ndombele who haven't played for, what, 6 months nearly, you know, during lockdown and stuff like that. And it was just very, very disappointing to watch, you know, to not get a shot on target against a team who have been, you know, conceding goals left, right, and centre. You know, they conceded 5 away at Man United, they conceded 4 at home to you guys.
Yeah.
It was just really, really disappointing. And, you know, kind of like heading into the Arsenal game, I know that with a derby, that old cliche, anything can happen. But, you know, as soon as Lacazette put that thunderbolt in from the top corner, I was thinking, oh, no, this could be anything. You know, our kind of heads dropped. But I was really pleased with how Spurs did, to be honest. You know, they... It was quite interesting that Mourinho changed formation from the Thursday because he went into a kind of 4-4-2. He kind of played Kane on his own up front. Now, Kane, as good as he is, I feel he massively slows Spurs down at times.
Yeah.
If you don't get the service into him, sometimes the game can become very, very predictable because all the defenders have to do is just mark him. And, you know, as easy as that sounds, he's not the quickest of players. So you need players off of him. And I think that using Son as the decoy just next to him worked really well. And that obviously showed with the goal. You know, obviously it was a mistake from Kolasinac who kind of tried to pass it back to David Luiz. I mean, Arsenal are an absolute circus at the back. So, you know, we were always going to get chances. But, yeah, I was really pleased with how Mourinho set the team up because he could quite easily have just gone for that 4-3-3 again, like he did against Bournemouth. But I think the stick that he got from the media after the Bournemouth game made him realise that he did need to change something because a lot of fans were getting very, very annoyed with him. And, you know, there were even people saying, oh, he's just not good enough, you know, get rid of him in the summer and get Poch back and stuff like that, which is, you know,
exactly.
outrageous, really, because, you know, what people need to remember is that he has taken over a team which were low on confidence, and a lot of them players don't want to be there, to be honest. So, you know, he's kind of doing the best that he can with the players that he's got. But I think, you know, if he's given the backing, there's going to be a lot of ins and outs at Spurs this summer. So, yeah, I mean, for us to get such an impressive victory over Arsenal, I was really chuffed with it. You know, it might not mean the most in regards to league positions and stuff like that, but, you know, just to get one over on him is brilliant. And I was really with it, especially after Thursday, and you know how down everyone was about it on Thursday. So, yeah, I thought we did really well, to be honest.
From what I've seen of the match card, I didn't watch too much of it, of course, with Carl was busy like doing other stuff as well. But from what I've seen of the match, I thought, to be honest, Tottenham played pretty well in the game. Serge Aurier, I think he was to blame for the goal.
He's just a bit of a nightmare, Aurier, to be honest. I mean, he just makes so many decisions, and he's so rash as well. He kind of gets caught out of position. He throws himself into challenges. I mean, you know, if you ever go and watch Spurs play, whenever he's 50-50 in a challenge, all the fans, you can hear them go, no, don't do it, because he's a walking red card. He's just so rash, and I don't think he's ever going to get it coached out of him, to be honest.
There's a few players like that today in Newcastle as well, like John Joe Shelby. Sometimes he has a fiery temper, and if he goes, and that's it. It's just gone, and it's game hour form.
You know what's happening, don't you? As soon as their head's not in the game, you just know what's about to happen. It's just a nightmare. But yeah, I mean, I think that right back's definitely going to be one of the areas that Mourinho's going to look at improving in the summer. I mean, to be honest. You know, you got Vertonghen there who isn't good enough anymore. I think he's going to go. I think he'll definitely look at another right back. You know, like I say, if you think of what a Mourinho team is, Serge Aurier as a Mourinho right back is the furthest thing away from what he would want him to be. So, yeah, he's. I mean, you can't put all the blame on Mourinho for the recent results, but I think that to get one over on Arsenal and to give that belief that heading into next season, that something can be done about it, I think will be really, it's given us guys quite a lot of. It's given us quite a lot of optimism, really. That if he is back properly, you never know, do you?
So, like, talking about obviously Mourinho, I've always had a soft spot for Mourinho because of the way he manages teams, and of course he was the understudy to Bobby Robson when he
Yeah,
was at Barcelona as well. So he's always had a place in his heart for Newcastle fans and the area. And every time he comes here, he always calls it Sir Bobby's home. So seeing him at Tottenham, is a hard one to say because really would like to see him play. Really would like to see him managing Newcastle one day. But I think with the right guidance, like you say, I think he could do a really good job there. Obviously, it is a little bit of a sad one that Tottenham got rid of Pochettino for
yeah,
like you guys because he was a really good manager. I don't
he
know
was.
why they got rid of him, to be honest, neither. Getting used to a Champions League final. Yes, you've lost out, of course, sorry to bring that up, against Liverpool. But, I would have kept him on, to be honest. If I was Levy and like the ownership as well, I would have kept Pochettino on. Don't know your thoughts on that, of course, but, you know,
Yeah, I mean, it was a really difficult one with Poch because he without winning a trophy, he's probably our most successful ever non-trophy winning manager. I mean, it doesn't really make sense, but Spurs fans held him in such high regard for what he built there. And I mean, all you had to do was go and watch him play on a match day, and he cultivated an atmosphere where the fans, the players, the management, everybody were all in it together, and it wasn't just the way we played. Granted, we played some unbelievable football under him, but he really pulled the club together. And I think that the character that he instilled in the players was a massive part of us getting to the Champions League final. I mean, we had to play, Guardiola's Man City away and stuff like that in that Champions League run, and even right up until that Lucas Moura goal away in Ajax. We never gave up hope, and that was what that's why Spurs fans love Poch so much, because he just needed that one trophy to kind of round off that project that he built there, and that's why that Champions League final was such a big deal for us. Because if we'd have won that, it would have given the players a massive, almost confidence boost and a belief, a reaffirming in the belief that what Poch is doing was the right way of doing it. And the way that they lost it, I think a lot of the players thought, I don't think he can take us any further. And that's where the league form dropped off, and we had
yeah,
started to have disappointing results and stuff like that. And in the end, he just looked exhausted from it all. Like when he was fired, he just didn't look right, and it looked as if he was pleading with Levy and and the board to give him these players that could propel Spurs to maybe another title challenge or something like that. But he didn't get the players, and I think that some of the attitudes of the players under Mourinho now just goes to show that it wasn't actually Poch that was the problem there. I think that the players are a big problem at that club, and there does need to be a big change. But yeah, just going on to Mourinho, it's going to be interesting to see what he does there, because obviously with this coronavirus outbreak and the lack of money that everyone's got, he wouldn't have gone to Spurs unless Daniel Levy gave him, a
yeah,
commitment
promise.
of money. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how much money he gets given and what kind of control he gets given over the players, because like I said to you just now, there does definitely seem to be almost like an atmosphere of staleness around the club, that a lot of these players don't want to be there anymore. So, to be honest with you, I wouldn't have anyone else in charge of, overseeing a rebuild of a club than Mourinho, because he knows what needs to be done, and he's ruthless, and he'll go and do it. So I am quietly optimistic about it, but he does just need to be given the time. And if we don't qualify for the top four next season, with that mortgage that we've got on that £1 billion stadium, obviously, you kind of know what our chairman's like. He won't mess around when it comes to money. So it's a very important time to be a Spurs fan at the moment and to be around the club. We'll just have to see what happens and whether sacking Pochettino was worth it. So
yeah, it's a sort of similar situation to what Newcastle's got in it with Levy and the ownership at Tottenham with
yeah,
Ashley in that. Yeah, it's a similar situation.
yeah, it's difficult because I think that the difference between Ashley and Levy is that with Levy, I do genuinely think he cares about the club. He used to be I think he is still a Spurs fan, not he used
Yeah.
to be, but he used to support them as a kid and stuff like that. Whereas you feel Mike Ashley is kind of he's got he doesn't care if Newcastle win a trophy, just as long as the books, they're not in debt and he's not making a loss on the club. I think that's all he cares about. Whereas I think that Levy is so careful about building he's so careful about building Spurs up. He does want them to be successful, but as Liverpool and City have shown, Spurs are never going to go out and spend 75 million quid on a Virgil van Dijk.
No.
He would rather go and look in the youth academy for a local lad from London to bring it through, and it's a lot easier said than done because that caliber of Van Dijk player isn't there, is it? In most youth academies, so it's a difficult one to try and criticise Levy. I know that a lot of Spurs fans aren't too happy with him for sacking Poch and stuff like that, but everything he does is with the club in mind, whether that's right decision or wrong decision. Sometimes I do genuinely think he cares about the club, but it's I just don't know where he goes next. Whereas, obviously with Mike Ashley, he seems to almost be self-sabotaging himself sometimes with, like some of the decisions he makes. I mean, like from a neutral point of view, you look at some of the stuff that he used to do to Rafa Benitez, in terms of transfer budgets and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you realise the calibre of manager that you've got there in Rafa? It's just, I just couldn't believe, when Rafa left, I mean, I was convinced that you guys were going to get relegated because it was one of them where it was like, this is like Rafa stayed with you when you went down, which in itself is a miracle that a calibre of manager that good would stay.
Yeah.
But then to bring it back up and then he still doesn't get backed, it's like, what is Ashley doing here? It just didn't really make sense.
It's like basically, really, Ashley bought the club as a way to flaunt to his friends that he owns a football club, basically, and then to just use it as a big advertising board for his company and Sports Direct, or as we like to call it, Shite Direct, as Newcastle fans. And to be honest, I am so glad that the Saudis are literally on the horizon. They're so close to coming in, and it's just taken Richard Masters, who's a Villa fan, by the way, as well. Didn't know if you know that. No. But he's a Villa fan, which doesn't bode well for Newcastle fans, being that Aston Villa fans really don't like it that much. Don't know why.
Do you think that if the takeover is completed, the first thing they'll do is rip down the Sports Direct sign either side of the Newcastle United Stadium sign?
I hope so. I really do.
It's so ugly, isn't it? I mean, I cringe for you guys when you see it on the telly and it's just banded over the top of the stadium. You just think, oh man, it looks so bad.
It's just so bad. He even had it on like the Gallagher as well, on the top of the Gallagher stand, painted on, and then the paint over that.
Yeah, it's horrendous. I was reading talking about Mourinho and how much you love Mourinho and how the affiliation he got. Apparently, he's never won at St James's Park, which I never knew. Which is an amazing stat, really. Maybe like you were saying about how fondly he holds in regards to Bobby Robson and stuff like that. Maybe he deliberately does it so he doesn't cause any heartache to Newcastle fans.
I think so sometimes.
It was an amazing stat yesterday. He said he'd never won there as a manager, and when you consider some of the teams that he's managed, that Chelsea side that only conceded 13 goals all season and stuff like that. for him to have never won a game at St James's Park, I couldn't believe it when I heard that.
It's strange. It's a strange defeat. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he's won basically in every single stadium in Europe. He's won trebles and stuff like that. It was, I couldn't believe it.
Right, so moving on, we'll talk a little bit about the game coming up against yourselves. So going into this game, how do you think your team's going to favour in this game?
It's a tricky one. This I'm not looking forward to it, to be honest, because we've had a couple of horror results at St James's Park in the last few years. I remember, I think it was Pochettino's first season, the season that you guys got relegated under Rafa, out of nowhere, last game of the season. I think you beat us 5-1 or 5-0 or something like that.
Yeah, that was right. Yeah, was 5-1, I believe, on the last game.
Yeah, I think it was 5-1 because we were pushing for the Champions League, and we went to you guys who were already relegated. I think it was at the time under Rafa Benitez, and that result just absolutely come out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, great. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens because Newcastle, arguably got nothing really to play for this season anymore. We've got kind of Europa League a little bit. I mean, the chances of us qualifying for the top four are absolutely dead in the water now. But I'm curious to see how Mourinho sets the team up. After the Bournemouth game, first and foremost, Mourinho doesn't like losing games away from home. He's notoriously very organised. He sets the team up to not concede goals away from home. So it will be interesting to see what he does. I mean, personally, I'd like us to go 4-4-2 again, like we did against Arsenal, because I think that, with all due respect, I think that we can get at that Newcastle back line a little bit with Son and Kane and stuff like that. But I was reading the other day that apparently Bruce has been trying a back five away at City in a couple of other games recently, hasn't he?
Yeah, which does not bode well because it didn't work against City, who ended up getting hammered 5-0 by them. And they were pretty lacklustre, to be honest, as well, in my opinion, City. If we had played the 4 at the back, I think we might have stood a chance. But, playing 5 at the back, he's seen it doesn't work. He continues to play it. I don't think Steve Bruce will ever learn his lesson. And he's trying to prove as well to the Saudis that he's the man for the job when they come in as well.
I mean, to be honest with you, playing 5 at the back away to Man City, Guardiola coaches his teams to break down 5 at the back. So it makes sense to go and do that because eventually they will break you down with the quality of player they've got. I'm sure that, like fans like yourself would arguably, go and attack them because they have shown that, if you go and play with 2 up front, their defence isn't the best defence in the world and you can get chances. Norwich have beaten them this season.
Yeah.
I read something the other day that City have lost 9 games this Premier League season. They've lost more than Arsenal, I think it is. So, they can be got at, and it must be so frustrating for fans, when you go to places like that and you see a back 5 and immediately, you're on the retreat. Because I saw the FA Cup game against them as well. I mean, it was my God, it couldn't have been more, outweighed in City's favour, could it really? It just didn't even compete, was it?
To be honest, we should have actually went for that because we were already safe in the Premier League. We were staying up for another season. That was the last thing that we had going for winning the season. We might as well have went for it. But, Bruce, 5 at the back, just threw it away, gave it to Man City. And then he just decides again, we've got City again, let's do the same again, 5 at the back. If it doesn't work in the FA Cup game, it's not going to work in the Premier League. Rafa Benitez used it, fair enough. Rafa Benitez is a much more tactical manager, and it worked. We came away from that game with a win against City because of him using that. We got slated for defending our asses off in the game, but we still came away from that game with a win. Then you watched other teams, I think Southampton or Bournemouth or somebody like that did it not long after us. And they got praised for doing it, but Newcastle got slated for doing it. And that's the thing, that always makes you laugh about the media is that everything Newcastle does is always slated, but
Yeah,
anybody else does it, they get praised.
I think that there's more criticism towards Newcastle because I think quite a lot of neutral fans are frustrated that you're not as good as you should be. And I was saying to you just before the stream started, if this
Yeah,
takeover does happen, there is potential for Newcastle as a club to really kick on because everything's there. You've got the stadium, you've got the fan base. The Newcastle, in essence, are a big club. It's just that, with the mismanagement, above the manager's head in the last decade or so, it's kind of gone backwards, hasn't it? And I feel
yeah,
that, sometimes like people do see Newcastle still as a big club, despite where they are in the league and stuff like that. And I think that's why they get a bit of stick because they should be doing arguably better than what they have been doing in the last few years. I know that people like Joel Linton and St Maximin and Almiron have come in and players like that. And, I really like St Maximin and Almiron as players. I think they're really good. But I think that under Steve Bruce, I know that, they've shown flashes of form, but they need to be playing in a system where, they're not essentially acting as defensive players when they haven't got the ball and stuff like
yeah,
that. Because, I think that's where the frustration comes from it. And obviously, you referred to Rafa playing five at the back as well. It's the same as Steve Bruce. Rafa knows how to coach a defence properly. I mean, he's one of the best in the world at,
yeah,
setting up a team for a game plan and stuff like that. Whereas, all credit to Steve Bruce. I think he's done an all right job this season, but he's not anywhere in the league of Rafa Benitez in terms of, giving a manager a plan and a long-term vision for a club. I think that, Bruce does a job. Bruce won't get you relegated, but if the Saudi guys come in and give him 300 million, I mean, it's not the same as going to get another manager and give him the money. And that's not a dig at Bruce. It's just that he's not in that caliber of management, is he really?
yeah. Because like if you look at the managers, when you think world class managers, there's only a select bunch of managers that's in
Yeah,
there. So like, you've
yeah,
got your Pep Guardiolas, your Jurgen Klopps, your Jose Mourinho's, your Rafa Benitez's. You've got your Nagelsmann as well in Germany.
yeah,
He's an excellent
very
manager.
good. Yeah,
But Steve Bruce, he reeks of championship football. He reeks of that management style like Sam Allardyce. Long ball, boring, unattractive football. You don't want to see that. At a club like us, because or any club to be honest. Newcastle attract passionate football, passionate fans.
yeah,
You go all the way back to like the 90s when Keegan was there. Him and Pep and Pocento and that all have like the same sort of similar like play styles.
yeah. Well, they
Um,
attack, don't they? They want to play attacking football, and it was like what I was saying to you earlier. Going away to Man City, who score goals for fun anyway, and playing five at the back, you'd rather lose 5-0, but at least have a go than losing 5-0 and putting 10 men behind the ball for 90 minutes. Do you know what I mean? At least
yeah,
you at least got to show that bravery, and I think that's why Bruce gets stick and will never. I don't think he'll survive the takeover if it happens because all the decision making people need to do is just have a look at the style of football that he plays, and it's just not. It's not indicative of the type of club that Newcastle will want to become. He's part of that Pardew, Allardyce, all of them kind of guys,
yeah,
like stuff like that. It's an era of football which it might be effective 10 or 12 games of a season, but the other 20, 25 games of a season, teams are going to find you out because the level of coaching and the way that the European coaches have come over and influenced teams now. It's a hell of a lot more advanced, and all you've got to do is have a look at teams like even Norwich. I mean, I know that Norwich
yeah,
have been season, but at least they try and attack. Do you know what I mean? And that's just a a clear example of how many teams are being coached to try and play football the right way now. So yeah, it's going to be difficult for Bruce to survive the takeover if and when it does go through, I
think. So going into this game against yourselves, what would you go for a score prediction?
I was thinking about this earlier. I knew you was going to ask this, and I was trying to think what I was trying to think of what was going to happen. I don't think Spurs are going to be expansive and try and attack. And obviously, like we was just saying about Bruce, I don't think he'll set out a team to go and run at Spurs. I think it'll either be a 1-0 to Spurs or a 1-1, something like that. It's not going to be a lot of goals, and it might not be a great watch, but yeah, I think there won't be too many chances. It will be two very well organised, very well set up teams that will try and break each other down on the break or something like that. So yeah, I'll go for 1-1.
1-1. I think, to be honest, going into this game, I think Bruce is going to again probably adapt the back five, which won't be great. So with that in mind, in the past 2 games that we've played as well, the hammer into Man City and the unlucky loss to Watford, I'm going to go with yourselves on this one. I would normally go with our team, but I'm going to go with yourselves on this one, and I'm going to say Spurs to come away from this one with a 2-0 win against us. I don't think you're going to absolutely hammer it, but I do think you'll get at least 2 goals against us. But it all depends as well on if Dubravka's on his game or not on the day, and who plays in the team as well. If we go with Gale up front, we might have a better chance. I'm not the biggest fan of Joe Linton. I just don't rate him as a player. He doesn't seem to get in the areas enough.
At all. I don't think he's a Premier League centre forward in the slightest. And I mean, it's just another example of the mismanagement of that club. I mean, how much did you guys pay for him? 45 million, was it?
40 million. Like 40 million.
I mean, yeah, and he's got what is it, 2 goals, something like that? And one of them was against us at White Hart Lane, wasn't it? So it's just,
he scored 2 in the league, and he's got, I think, 3 or 4 in the cup this season.
Yeah. So I mean, it's nowhere near good enough, and that'll be certainly one of the areas to try and strengthen, won't it be, if the takeover happens?
Not great. Not great for Newcastle, especially since he wears the number 9 shirt as well, and that is a very iconic number at our club. So
yeah, it's a bit of an insult, that, isn't it, giving Joe Linton a number 9 shirt, because he was never going to go and replicate, what Alan Shearer used to go and do. You could tell that 3 games in. So it was a bit of a poor decision, A, to sign him, and B, to give him the number 9 shirt at such a famous club, eh?
He actually asked for that number 9 shirt as well. So
yeah, it's a bit of a poor decision, that one, Carl, eh?
Yeah, bit of a poor decision. Not the greatest decision by Newcastle, but hell, that's Newcastle at the end of the day. We never do things right these days.
You'll get there, mate. Keep with it.
I'd like to thank you for coming on the channel there, Jordan, mate.
Yeah, cheers, Carl. Thanks very much for having me, mate. I've really appreciated, obviously just settling down, talking about football with you and stuff like that, and obviously let the best team win on Wednesday. Let's see what happens. It'll be no hard feelings, whatever happens, eh?
No hard feelings. No hard feelings.
Cool. All right then, mate. Thanks very much.
No problem. So that's been the match preview for Newcastle versus Spurs. Thanks to Jordan for coming on the channel. I'll put his link down in the description below. Please go subscribe to him. He's only got 17 subscribers at the moment on YouTube. Hopefully we can get that up by quite a bit. Excellent guy. Great chat we've had here today. And
yeah, really enjoyed it.
Good luck for the match coming up.
You too. Thanks very much, mate. Cheers.
See you later. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. However, lads.